the main topic, all the news channels, all the finance channels, and everything. Everyone's been talking about the Apple Watch, and I think a lot of you knew this was going to come up. But the Apple Watch is a craze. It's going nuts. There's videos and articles. Like literally, when I was going through CNET, Verge, and IGN, it was literally just Apple Watch, Apple Watch, Apple Watch, Apple Watch. So, I mean, you can't get enough of it these days. So, I just want to give my quick 2 sentences on it. So, for those of you who actually watched my first podcast or my live reactions and my review of the Apple Watch, you know that I'm not too much of a big fan. And I'm going to come out in the gates right and say it though. For those of you who have iPhones and anyone who asked you which watch they should get, the first question you should ask is, what phone do they have? Because if they have an iPhone, I automatically just say, get the Apple Watch. Because for me, the Pebble really doesn't do justice as a smartwatch for Apple users. And now they finally have a viable smartwatch that they can use and pretty much integrate into their lives. So for me, I say get it. But when you go ahead and ask an Android user, it's pretty much out of the picture. So when people say, what's the better smartwatch? It's really, I play the middleman because you got to look at it from both ways. You got to first ask, which device do you have? And for me, Android definitely offers more variety. You have a far more range of products that you can choose from than obviously the one Apple Watch. And on top of the Android Wear market, you also have Samsung in the range too, because Samsung is pretty much the #1 smartphone seller in the Android segment, and they've made their own proprietary watches for their phones, and pretty much like the Gear S, and that's the one I use. And so going back to the Apple Watch, it's not, people pretty much like, I made a commercial on this this past week about making a T-shirt. It's not an Apple Watch. I made a T-shirt on that, and I made that T-shirt because I have been, ever since they announced the Apple Watch officially, saying that it's going to be released next month, I have been getting hounded with questions nonstop about whether my Samsung Gear S was a smartwatch. And at first I just sort of giggled because I'm like, these people all see the commercials. They've gone online to the Apple website and seen the watch. They've gone to the Apple Store and they've played around with the watch. Yet, when they see another smartwatch out there, they automatically assume that it's an Apple Watch because they, in their minds, believe that it is solely the only smartwatch out there because they believe that Apple is the first innovator. And even though the last 2 years there's been a flood of smartwatches coming out, 2/3 of the market, roughly, are iPhone users. So you got to give them respect that they own the majority of the market. But the what is it called? These people are just so oblivious. Not all iPhone users are, but the majority of them pretty much refuse to see past the Apple veil, the curtain that they've pretty much been behind this whole time, because they can't see past Apple because they believe that Apple is the most innovative company in the world. And they used to be. I mean, I've gone over this topic numerous times. They used to be. But this Apple Watch is a prime example of how they're not anymore. They're coming out with the smartwatch 2 years after the fact. And a lot of you can argue, and will argue, it's a valid argument point, that they waited the 2 years because they wanted to see how the market would react to just smartwatches being released by Android and Samsung, and develop a proper product before releasing it to market. Valid argument. But looking at their first attempt at the watch, I was slightly disappointed with them. Because for me, I was like, with the Gear S and everything, like, oh, curved displays, standalone functions, internet browsers, etc., etc. I was like, man, Apple really has the arsenal to make a kick-ass watch. But then they came out with this. It's a very plain design. Interface is there. I mean, interface is fine. You got a lot of app supports. That's fine. But a lot of the hardware and functionality that can work with a lot of the hardware isn't there. I'm actually really surprised that they didn't add a standalone function for the Apple Watch. I'm actually really shocked at that. And in the design too, I thought they would go with the curved display. pretty much show off the curved display on their watch, and then for the iPhone 7, release a curved display for the 7 to show off that they can be, they can have sleek designs more than Samsung, but they didn't. And I don't know. I'm pretty sure that I'm not the only one that was disappointed with the Apple Watch. Even my coworker at work, he's an avid Apple user, but he's saying that he won't get the Apple Watch this time around because he wants to wait for the next one because he was disappointed with the design. And honestly, he was almost considering coming over to Android because he's pretty much getting tired of their shenanigans these days. The MacBook is a whole nother story, but sorry. But seriously though, I've gone over this topic numerous times, but pretty much the Apple Watch, people argue with me that both Android Wear and Apple are going to offer a lot more apps than Samsung does. But then I flip it around to them because I've used Android Wear and I used a ton of apps that came on the market and everything. But after pretty much 2 years of being a smartwatch user, those apps are utterly useless. Like a majority of them. And I say that because the watch isn't a replacement for your phone. It's not there yet. Because you're used to, when you're browsing the internet, you're playing games, watching videos, doing media stuff, gathering information, you want to do it on a relatively good sized screen where you can read it. Like doing it on the watch, it's tedious. And once the activity becomes tedious, you just don't want to do it. Like the Gear S, yes, I can browse the internet, watch videos, and do all that stuff, but I find myself not doing it because it's annoying to. For the big stuff that you want to do, you have a perfectly good phone in your pocket to use it with, so you use it. The watch I see as more of an extension of the phone. And pretty much that's what Apple has pretty much done well. It's a perfect companion device. You can get your notifications and everything, but when people bring up to me the argument of, it beats Samsung because it's got more apps. No, because I'm going to guarantee you that the majority of you who either own a current smartwatch or will be getting a smartwatch, over time will not be using a lot of these apps. Like things like, holding your rewards cards, tip calculators and that kind of stuff. And even Facebook and Twitter being able to respond to those are obviously useful, but things like browsing the internet and stuff, it just doesn't work. The screen's too small. I'll put it this way. Because back in the day when they started allowing internet browsing on the flip phones, it was annoying because the screen was very limiting. You had to zoom in and out, and it just wasn't meant for that device. And it feels that way with the smartwatches. And I don't know. I don't want to linger too much on this topic too much longer, but I would want to see them improve upon the functionalities more. Pretty much getting the gestures right, getting the notifications right. I had to test it out for myself. Thankfully, my manager, she's actually getting an Apple Watch, so she's gonna go ahead and let me play around with it when she gets it next week. So I'll be able to give a proper review on it. But just from their announcement, I was disappointed with the design and the lack of a standalone function. I think a lot of people were. Because I'm still sticking with my Samsung Gear S because the fact that I can leave my phone at home comfortably and walk away and still get my phone calls, my text messages and emails, that's just very convenient for me. And yes, the new Android Wear update that came out will allow now Android Wear devices to connect to the Wi-Fi automatically, but it's still not a standalone mode where you can comfortably walk away from your phone and then still get your data, still get your messages and your notifications, because without Wi-Fi, you're not connected remotely to your device. And that's where the use of the 4G and the 3G data plans will come in. So we'll go ahead and put that down. But that's enough. But if you guys have any more questions about the Apple Watch or anything, or what my thoughts on it, just please go ahead and feel free to comment or send me a message, or send it at hashtag LPX podcast. But we'll see. I mean, everyone knew it was going to sell out. I knew it was going to sell out. No matter what I say or a lot of other people say, iPhone owners needed a watch, and they finally got it. So it's no surprise that they came out. I'll put it this way: a part of me is very happy that they finally released the watch, though, because now that they're in the market, people are now recognizing that smartwatches are here. I mean, they kind of knew that they existed, but ever since now the Apple Watch has come out, now everybody is all of a sudden an expert on smartwatches. Because for the last 2 years or so, and when everyone looked at my Gear S, they would just be like, what is that? Is that a watch, or is that, like, they would ask me these silly questions, and a lot of them would be, their minds would be blown. But now, as soon as the Apple Watch gets announced, everyone's all of a sudden an expert. They're like, is that the Apple Watch? Or can it do that? Can it do that? Like, they kind of know what they're talking about. So, yes, I'm annoyed at their questions being wrong. But at the same time, I'm just glad that they're out and pushing the market forward. And now Google's getting, stepping their game up, and hopefully Samsung will step up their game as well, too. So, fingers crossed, guys.